Hello and welcome to 21st Century. I'm Daljit Dhaliwal. Today is a special show where we look at the role of land for people on different sides of the world. First, we take you to the Solomon Islands, a land of dense trees once populated by headhunters. A struggle is underway. How to keep up with the 21st century while also protecting a way of life.
Tam te grans blomi fala, ota live lo here, then at born at mam blomi fala, then mam blomi fala him live lo here, so him born me still live lo place where him stay too. My name is Alice Bulu Sakui. I have 6 children. Some of the nuts that we easily pick, they are planted by our forefathers, grandmothers. When they are born us, they usually share the nuts between us children. All of us who live here in Zaire, we own this land.
Zaire, where Bulu and her family live, is a tiny community in the Solomon Islands, a group of over 1,000 small islands in the southern Pacific Ocean. The village, surrounded by dense rainforest and accessible only by sea, is one of the most remote corners on Earth. The sea and the forest are the people's lifeline.
We usually go to the forest, we find some wild yams in the forest. Sometimes people go to the forest, they just go for hunting of wild pigs. We women, if we go to the forest, we find leaves for baking, for cut firewood.
The forest, by filtering groundwater and holding soil in place, also helps maintain the coastal ecosystem. Healthy coral reefs and tree roots provide feeding and spawning sites for fish and seafood for the villagers.
The local ones, people just go to gardens, Blumifala, the forest or the sea, and people collect him.
And the forest products also provide a small income.
Women, Salem coconut oil, betel nut, when people go get him from bush, people plant them there. Go market him. Staka things when people get him from forest, people save market him for people a little bit take him income for helping families.
But communities like Bulu's are not the only ones with their eyes on the rich forest resources. Valuable tropical timber is the logger's prize. But to get it, swathes of virgin forest are destroyed, perhaps forever. Logging of the country's forests, largely by commercial companies from overseas, aiming to satisfy the growing global demand for hardwood, is changing not only the landscape, but also a whole way of life for the island's people.
Solomon Islands may have made many mistakes about logging in the country since it started engaging in large-scale logging back in the 90s. And so, whilst it helps the economy, it doesn't really help the people in the long run.
Reverend Moses Maizama, who ministers to many small communities on Bulu's island of Vangunu, and has seen firsthand the impact of unsustainable logging, says that forests must be better managed before it's too late. Or the result for local people, he says, could be disastrous.
We find rivers polluted. We find animals which form part of the diet of the community started to leave the place. We find that even the reefs and the marine resources starting to have the effects of it. It affects the food security of the community, and it might take years before it can come back to normal.
Reverend Moses calls for better regulation of logging companies by the government to protect local communities. While laws are in place to regulate logging activities, he says they are rarely implemented.
I am of the opinion that the government is not really responsible when it embarks on this logging industry. They're letting the operators and the people sort out the agreements. And many times people fell victims to those agreements, not realizing the costs involved and the impacts.
Julius Hurrier from the Ministry of Forestry disagrees. He says that laws do exist to protect the forest and the rights of those who live there. But as most land here is owned communally, ultimately it is the people themselves who decide whether to sell the logging rights on their land.
It is the people who own the forest, and therefore they determine what to do with their forest.
And, he continues, there's no doubt that logging brings wealth into the country.
The Solomon Islands economy depends heavily on logging. About 60% of the GDP comes from the forests.
And when funds are tight, as they are for many islanders, offers from commercial companies to buy logging rights can solve immediate financial problems.
A lot of the Solomon Islanders find it hard to meet school fees in the villages and as such. They attempted to allow logging companies to work on their land.
One chief who steadfastly resists such temptation to sell out the rights to their tribal lands is Bulu's uncle and chief of her community of Zaira, Bishop Green Gino. He has been approached several times with large sums of money from loggers.
Money is the biggest temptation. They did try me to bribe me with money. But the important thing that since I grew up with my daddies and with my people here, that the land is not thing to be sold. Doesn't matter we are not rich, but we have to depend on the land for the future of our generation. Our young people, our children, their children's children, for the future, where should they go if we destroy the land?
But Green Gino faces a dilemma. He knows that simply blocking logging companies from their forest won't work. His people need to also gain an income from their natural resources, or they will be tempted to give in to lucrative offers or to leave the community to seek jobs elsewhere. He has come up with a scheme to protect both the forest and his people's livelihoods. A scheme he hopes will bring both visitors and money without harming the trees. First step, he's declared a part of the forest next to the village a conservation area.
This does not mean that I stop the people to use the land, but to use the land wisely.
And this means taking from the forest only what they need to live.
Any family can go to the community preserve areas, choose one trees to cut and sell them for their school fees to help their family.
And when the family needs a home, the forest, as it always has, provides.
Every materials when me fala building no this house, me fala just take him forest. Sagupam, aloe cane, and even tibas. Me fala collect him no forest blow me fala anuma.
Bulu's husband prepares the leaves for their new roof. The other village building that needs a roof is the new church. And harvesting timber for this is also permitted. In 2015, the village will celebrate their church's centenary, the community's biggest celebration for years. But Green Gino is clear on how this tree felling should be managed.
Just take the one that you need. Don't just destroy the small ones so that you can harvest for next year or so on. So they are sustainable.
Working with Green Gino is one of Zaira's few college graduates, environmental scientist Vera Pulekera, now with the Solomon Islands Community Conservation Partnership, or SICCP. Vera also knows that simply restricting use of the communal forest to the villagers could cause problems.
So that's why we need to manage it, and then we have to work on something that will not destroy the forest, but we get something that will provide for us in the longer term.
Vera and Chief Green Gino saw the potential to develop ecotourism. The acres of unspoilt forest teeming with fauna and flora and crystal clear rivers and playgrounds could be just the wilderness adventurous tourists are looking for.
When they manage the forest, they need to get something out from it. And they agree on that, and we started to promote local tourism programs here. So we call it Eco Village Stay program.
Bulu was one of the first to offer homestays to visitors. They stay in a traditional village house and eat food plucked from the forest and the sea, which Bulu and the other women take turns preparing.
Everyone have to get benefit, and because this conservation where me running him blow whole community lo this place.
Due to the remote location and treacherous seas, only a few determined visitors have made it to Zaira. And once there, hiking in the unspoilt forest is one of the main draws. But this is just a beginning. Finding a way to earn a livelihood from the forest that excludes unsustainable logging is a challenge. That's why the United Nations Forum on Forests, or UNFF, encourages governments and international donors to support small-scale ventures like this. Since 2012, the UNFF has worked with Pacific Island countries like the Solomon Islands to find viable long-term alternatives to logging. For many communities such as Zaira, the growing ecotourism industry is an opportunity to both preserve their forest and provide a sustainable future for generations to come.
And that's our responsibility to look after the forest, manage our resources. I see that's the future.
By me pala strangle, by me pala meeting stuck a problem. If logging him come and destroy him the forest.
I will never sell out the land because people are important and land is important for the future. I will never do that one until I die.